They laughed when the farmer showed up to the weapons expo with a modified crop thresher. Nobody laughed when he demonstrated what it did to a Krellian battle tank in under 4 seconds. This is the story of Tom Briggs, a third-generation wheat farmer from Kansas, who accidentally invented a weapon so devastating that 3 galactic superpowers tried to steal it. 2 assassins tried to kill him for it, and the Galactic Convention on Warfare banned it before it was ever used in combat. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the most dangerous humans aren't the ones in laboratories or war rooms, but the ones fixing tractors with duct tape in spite.
Tom Briggs was not a violent man. He was 57 years old, grew wheat on 2,000 acres outside of Hays, Kansas, had bad knees from 40 years of farm work, and his biggest enemies were locusts, drought, and the bank that held his mortgage. He'd never been in the military, never worked for a defense contractor, never even been in a fistfight since high school. The closest Tom had come to weapons development was the time he rigged up a propane cannon to scare crows away from his fields. But Tom had something that a lot of engineers and scientists don't have: decades of experience making broken things work with whatever materials were available. When your nearest parts supplier is 40 miles away and your combine harvester breaks down in the middle of harvest, you learn to improvise. You learn to see connections between systems that weren't designed to work together. You learn that sometimes the solution to a problem isn't elegant or textbook, it's whatever actually works. This story starts with a combine harvester, a thunderstorm, and a piece of alien technology that fell from the sky. It was late August 2394. Earth had been part of the galactic community for about 15 years. Not a major player, just another member species trying to find its place. There was trade, cultural exchange, the occasional diplomatic incident. Life went on, just with more aliens around. Tom was combining wheat when the storm rolled in. He'd been watching the weather all day, trying to judge if he could finish the North 40 before the rain hit. He'd almost made it. Almost. But the clouds opened up fast, turning the afternoon dark, and Tom knew he'd have to stop. That's when something streaked across the sky, glowing orange, clearly not lightning. It hit about half a mile from Tom's position, out in the section he'd already harvested. The impact shook the ground hard enough that Tom felt it through the combine's suspension. A plane crash, maybe, or a meteorite. Tom grabbed his radio to call it in, but the storm was creating interference. Nothing but static. He'd have to drive out there, make sure nobody was hurt, then head back to the house to call properly. He drove the combine to the impact site, because his truck was back at the barn and the combine was already there. Practical. The crater wasn't huge, maybe 20 feet across, smoking in the rain, and in the center was something that definitely wasn't a meteorite. It was a machine, or part of one, roughly cylindrical, about the size of an oil drum, made from materials Tom didn't recognize. There were symbols etched into the surface that moved when he looked at them directly. The whole thing hummed with a frequency he could feel in his teeth. Tom had seen enough alien tech on the news to recognize this was something from off-world, probably fell off a ship during the storm. Happened sometimes, according to the reports. Space junk burning up on re-entry, except this one had made it to the ground. The smart thing would have been to leave it alone and call authorities. But Tom was a farmer, and farmers are fundamentally curious about how things work. Also, he was already soaked from the rain, and his knees hurt, and he'd be damned if he'd climbed down from the combine for nothing. He approached carefully, looking for any signs of danger. Radiation warnings, biohazard symbols, anything. The device was warm but not hot. The humming was steady, and there was a panel on one side that looked almost like it was designed to open. Tom had a toolbox in the combine, basic stuff, wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers. He'd fixed more equipment with those tools than most mechanics saw in a career. He examined the panel, found what might have been latches or fasteners, and carefully pried it open. Inside was a mess of components that Tom didn't understand but recognized at a fundamental level. Power source here, some kind of regulator there, connection points that clearly fed into other systems. It was alien technology, sure, but it followed the same basic logic as any machine. Energy goes in, work comes out, systems connect and regulate. And one component was clearly damaged from the impact. Cracked casing, exposed internals, leaking some kind of fluid that evaporated in the rain. This thing was broken, whatever it was supposed to do. Tom stared at it for a long moment. Then he did something that would change galactic history. He thought, I could fix that. Getting the device back to his workshop took some doing. It was heavy, dense like depleted uranium. Tom used the combine's maintenance hoist to load it into the grain bin, then drove back through the storm to his barn. The rain continued for 3 days. Tom couldn't work the fields anyway, so he worked on the device instead. Not for any particular reason, just because it was broken and he was a man who fixed broken things. He cleaned it carefully, documented everything with photos on his tablet. The damaged components seemed to be some kind of focusing assembly. Energy came from the power source, got regulated, then focused through this device before being emitted through the cylindrical opening at the front. A tool, Tom figured. Maybe a cutting torch for ship maintenance, or a mining laser, something industrial, not military. The aliens wouldn't drop military equipment, would they? The focusing assembly was cracked beyond repair, at least with the original materials. But the principle was clear enough. Take energy, concentrate it, direct it. Tom had worked with optics before, back when he'd experimented with solar concentrators for grain drying. Different scale, sure, but same basic idea. He didn't have alien materials, but he had a workshop full of Earth tech. Agricultural equipment, car parts, electronics scavenged from old appliances, 40 years of might need this someday accumulation. Tom fabricated a replacement focusing assembly using modified laser diodes from old disk drives, lenses from a salvaged microscope, and a focusing mechanism adapted from a camera. It was crude, held together with epoxy and hope, but the dimensional alignments were close enough. He spent another day figuring out the power regulation. The alien power source put out a steady current, but the voltage was weird, fluctuating in ways that suggested it was designed for alien electronics. Tom built a converter using parts from a microwave transformer and a voltage regulator from his solar panel system. On the 4th day after the storm, Tom had something that looked like it might work. An alien device, repaired with terrestrial parts, sitting on his workbench. He'd even fabricated a handle and a trigger mechanism using parts from a grain auger control system. It looked ridiculous. Alien tech covered with human jury rigging, held together with bolts, wire, and what might have been a piece of a beer can acting as a heatsink. But Tom had learned long ago that looking stupid didn't matter if it worked. He took it outside, pointed it at a junked car he'd been meaning to haul away for scrap, and pressed the trigger. Nothing happened for a second. Then the device hummed, the frequency rising rapidly, and a beam of something shot out. Not light, exactly. More like distortion in the air, like heat shimmer but focused and directed. The junked car didn't explode. It didn't melt. It disintegrated. The metal simply fell apart, breaking down into powder that drifted away on the breeze. In 4 seconds, a 1998 Ford pickup ceased to exist as anything recognizable. Just rust-colored dust and a few pieces of glass. Tom stared at the space where his truck had been. Then he looked at the device in his hands. Then, back at the dust. He said. That ain't right. Tom Briggs was not a stupid man. He recognized that what he'd just built was a weapon, a very effective weapon. The kind that could probably cut through military armor like it was tissue paper. His first instinct was to call authorities, report what he'd found, hand it over to people who knew what to do with dangerous alien tech. But 40 years of dealing with government bureaucracy, bank regulations, and Department of Agriculture paperwork had made Tom cautious about getting officials involved in anything. So he did what any Kansas farmer would do. He called his friend Dave, who was a retired engineer and the closest thing to a technical expert Tom knew personally. Dave arrived the next morning, skeptical about Tom's description over the phone. His skepticism lasted until Tom demonstrated the device on an old irrigation pump. Jesus Christ, Tom, Dave said, watching the pump disintegrate into powder. Do you understand what you've built? A weapon, Tom said. Pretty obvious. Not just a weapon? The weapon. I think that's a matter disruptor. I've read about them. Theoretical physics stuff. You break down molecular bonds at a quantum level. Targeted entropy acceleration. The energy requirements should be massive. but somehow that alien power source is generating enough. And your focusing mechanism, crude as it looks, is actually working better than it should. You've stumbled onto something that shouldn't be possible with current human technology. So, what do I do with it? Dave was quiet for a long time. Honestly, I don't know. Turn it over to the military, they'll classify it and maybe pay you a finder's fee. Keep it, and you're sitting on something that every power in the galaxy would kill for. Either way, your life as a quiet farmer is over. Tom thought about that. Thought about his mortgage, his land, his simple life. Then he thought about the wheat that still needed harvesting, and the storm damage he needed to repair, and the 1,000 small problems that made up a farmer's existence. What if I just destroyed it? Tom asked. Break it down, scatter the parts, pretend I never found it? Could you? Dave asked. Could you look at this thing knowing what it can do and just let it go? Tom couldn't. Because despite everything, there was a part of him that was proud of what he'd built. He'd taken broken alien technology and made it work using nothing but farm ingenuity. That meant something. That was worth something. There's a weapons expo in Denver next month, Dave said carefully. Military contractors, defense demonstrations, that kind of thing. What if you just showed it? Demonstrated what it can do? Let the market decide what it's worth? It was probably a terrible idea. Tom knew that. But it was also better than making the decision himself. So, he agreed. The Galactic Weapons Expo was held in Denver every year, a chance for defense contractors from across human space and beyond to showcase new developments. Military buyers from various species attended, looking for advantages. It was part trade show, part arms race, all business. Tom drove to Denver in his pickup truck, the device wrapped in a blanket in the back. He'd registered as an independent contractor, paid his booth fee, and set up in a corner of Hall C. Between a company selling upgraded plasma rifles and another demonstrating autonomous defense drones. His booth was laughably simple. A folding table. A poster board with "Disruptor Device, Demonstration Available" written in marker. And Tom himself, wearing his good jeans and a button-up shirt, looking like someone's grandfather at a yard sale. The sales reps from the corporate booths ignored him completely. The military buyers walked past without a second glance. Tom sat in his folding chair, eating a sandwich he'd packed from home, and wondered if Dave had been wrong about this whole thing. Then a Krellian officer stopped at his booth. The Krellians were one of the major military powers in the galaxy. Insectoid, about 7 feet tall, with armor plating that was naturally evolved and technologically enhanced. They were known for 2 things: military discipline and an absolute refusal to underestimate potential threats. You are demonstrating a disruptor device? The Krellian asked, mandibles clicking. The translation was provided by the universal comm unit everyone wore at the expo. Yes, sir, Tom said. Well, ma'am, I'm not sure of your pronouns. Sorry. Gender is irrelevant. Capabilities are relevant. What does your device disrupt? Molecular bonds, according to my friend. Makes things fall apart at the atomic level. Want to see? The Krellian's compound eyes focused intently. Yes. Tom led the officer to the demonstration area outside, a reinforced range where weapons could be safely tested. Other vendors and buyers followed, curious about what the random farmer was going to show. The range supervisor provided a target. A decommissioned Krellian battle tank, provided specifically because its armor was considered nearly indestructible. Composite materials, energy-absorbing layers, the kind of protection that could shrug off most conventional weapons. Tom took position at the firing line, unpacked his device, and raised a few eyebrows when people saw what he was holding. It looked like something assembled in a garage, because it was. Alien components mixed with human improvisation, held together with determination. Whenever you're ready, the range supervisor said, clearly expecting nothing impressive. Tom aimed at the tank, center mass, and pressed the trigger. The beam shot out, that weird, not quite light distortion, and hit the tank's armor. For a second, nothing seemed to happen. Then the armor began to crumble, breaking down into powder. The effect spread rapidly, eating through layers of protection that were designed to withstand anti-tank missiles. In 4 seconds, there was a hole 3 feet wide going completely through the tank. Tom released the trigger. The beam stopped. He lowered the device. The demonstration area was completely silent. Then chaos erupted. Military buyers rushed forward, demanding specifications. Corporate reps tried to buy the device on the spot. The Krellian officer stood motionless, compound eyes fixed on the hole in the tank, mandibles clicking in what might have been shock or respect or calculation. Tom just stood there, overwhelmed by the response, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. Within an hour, Tom had offers from 3 defense contractors wanting to buy the device. The starting bid was 10 million credits. By the end of the day, it was up to 50 million and climbing. He also had interest from the military forces of 6 different species. They wanted to license the technology, buy exclusive rights, commission production. The requests came so fast that Tom couldn't keep track, and he had attention from people he didn't want attention from. The first assassination attempt happened that night in his hotel room. Tom woke to find a figure in black tactical gear standing over his bed, holding some kind of energy blade. Tom did what any farmer would do when confronted with an intruder. He grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and threw it. The lamp missed, but the distraction gave Tom time to roll out of bed and grab the only weapon he had. The disruptor device, which he'd kept close because he didn't trust hotel safes. The assassin charged. Tom pressed the trigger. The beam caught the assassin's center mass, and the tactical gear disintegrated, followed immediately by the body. The assassin became powder before he hit the ground. Tom stared at the dust that had been a person 5 seconds ago. Then he threw up in the bathroom. Hotel security arrived to find Tom sitting on the floor, shaking, the device still in his hands. They called the police. The police called federal authorities. The federal authorities called military intelligence. By dawn, Tom was in protective custody. The device was in a secured facility, and he was being debriefed by people with very serious expressions and no sense of humor. "Mr. Briggs," said the agent in charge, a woman named Martinez who looked like she could bend steel with her mind. "Do you understand what you've created?" "A weapon," Tom said, for the second time in as many days. "Not just a weapon, a game changer. That device of yours can defeat armor that's considered impenetrable. It can eliminate targets without explosions, collateral damage, or radiation. It's clean, efficient, and devastating. Every military force in the galaxy wants it. Which means every intelligence agency, criminal organization, and terrorist group wants it too." "I didn't mean to create anything like that," Tom protested. "I was just fixing broken equipment." "Intent doesn't matter. Results matter. And the result is that you've shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. Congratulations, Mr. Briggs. Your life will never be normal again." She wasn't wrong. The next 3 months were a nightmare. Tom was moved to a secure facility while various government agencies fought over jurisdiction. The device was analyzed by teams of scientists who couldn't believe what they were seeing. Tom's improvised repairs, which should have been impossible, somehow worked better than anything they could design from scratch. "It's the agricultural parts," one scientist explained to Tom. "Your focusing mechanism uses principles from crop management technology. Optimized resource distribution. The way you regulate power flow is similar to irrigation system controls. You approach this like a farming problem, not a weapons problem. And somehow that perspective created something we never would have thought of." Meanwhile, the galactic community was reacting to news of the device. The Krellians demanded Earth share the technology, citing mutual defense treaties. The Valdrine sovereignty offered trade deals. The corporate consortium tried to buy the patents. The free colonies threatened sanctions if Earth weaponized it, and the Galactic Convention on Warfare convened emergency sessions to discuss whether the disruptor violated existing weapon prohibitions. Tom watched all of this from his secure facility, feeling completely disconnected from reality. He was a farmer. He grew wheat. He fixed equipment. He didn't start arms races or shift galactic power balances. "I want to go home," he told Agent Martinez during one of their regular debriefings. "That's not possible," she said. "Your farm is under surveillance by at least 4 foreign intelligence services. There have been 3 more assassination attempts, all stopped before they reached you. You're the most valuable person on Earth right now, and probably the most endangered. Because I fixed some alien equipment? Because you proved that human agricultural ingenuity can outperform advanced alien military engineering. That's terrifying to a lot of species. It suggests that humans, who are still considered a young species, might be more innovative than civilizations that have been spacefaring for millennia. You've made us a threat, Mr. Briggs. That changes everything. Tom was quiet for a long time. Then, what if I destroyed it? All copies, all research, everything, just gone. Would that fix things? Martinez considered. Maybe. But the knowledge exists now. You've proven it's possible. Other people will try to recreate it. Some might succeed. The genie's out of the bottle. So, what do I do? You testify before the Galactic Convention. You explain what you created and why. You help them understand that this wasn't some military project, just a farmer fixing broken equipment. Maybe that'll help them decide it's too dangerous to allow, and they'll ban it completely. Or maybe they'll allow regulated production. Either way, your testimony matters. Tom testified 3 weeks later, before the full Galactic Convention in Geneva. Representatives from 47 species, all of them wanting to know about the farmer who'd built the deadliest weapon in the universe. Tom wore his good suit, the one he'd bought for his daughter's wedding. He sat at a table that felt too big, in front of an audience that felt too important, and told his story. I'm a wheat farmer from Kansas, he started, 3rd generation. My grandfather homesteaded the land in 2287. My father expanded it. I've been working it for 40 years. I grow wheat, mostly hard red winter wheat. I'm good at it. He described finding the device, recognizing it was broken, deciding to fix it. Not for any particular reason except that fixing broken things was what he did. I've been repairing equipment my whole life, Tom explained. Tractors, combines, irrigation systems. When something breaks in the middle of harvest, you can't wait for a specialist or order parts from the factory. You fix it with whatever you have available. That's just farming. He talked about the modifications he'd made. How he'd used agricultural technology, because that's what he understood. How the principles of efficient resource distribution in irrigation systems translated to power regulation. How crop management optimization algorithms worked for energy focusing. I didn't set out to create a weapon, Tom said. I was just solving a problem using the tools and knowledge I had. The fact that it turned out to be devastating, that was an accident. A consequence I didn't predict or intend. The representatives listened. Some looked skeptical, others looked thoughtful. The Krellian delegation looked impressed despite themselves. Then came the questions. Could you recreate the device? Asked the Valdrine representative. Yes, Tom admitted. Now that I know it works, I could build another one, probably improve it, honestly. The first version was pretty rough. Would you share the specifications with the galactic community? Tom thought about that. No, I don't think I would. Because I've seen what it does. I've seen how people react to it. This thing I built, it's too powerful, too dangerous. It tips balances in ways that could start wars rather than prevent them. So you believe it should be banned? Asked the human representative. I believe it should never have existed, Tom said carefully. But since it does, yeah, I think it should be banned, destroyed, forgotten. Because I'm a farmer, not a weapons designer. My job is to grow things, not kill them. And what I built, accidentally or not, that goes against everything I believe in. The testimony went on for hours. Technical questions, ethical questions, political questions. Tom answered as honestly as he could, with the recognition that his words were determining the fate of technology that could change galactic warfare. At the end, the convention's chairman asked one final question. Mr. Briggs, if you could go back to that day in the storm, knowing what you know now, would you still fix the device? Tom was silent for a long moment. Then, no. I'd leave it in that crater and call authorities like I should have. Because some broken things shouldn't be fixed, some problems don't need solutions, and some knowledge is better left undiscovered. He paused. But I can't go back. None of us can. The device exists. The knowledge exists. So now we have to decide what kind of galaxy we want to live in. One where weapons like this are used, or one where we agree collectively that some things are too dangerous to permit. The vote took place over the next 3 days. The resolution was clear. ban the production, possession, and use of molecular disruptor technology. Classify it as a Category 1 prohibited weapon, alongside biological warfare agents and planet-killer devices. Tom's device was destroyed in a controlled disintegration, witnessed by representatives from every major power. The research data was classified and sealed. The scientists who'd studied it signed non-disclosure agreements backed by criminal penalties, and Tom Briggs was finally allowed to go home. The farm looked the same as when he'd left it 3 months ago. The wheat fields had been harvested by neighbors, a gesture of support. The barn still needed painting. The combine still had that weird rattle in the engine. Tom stood in his workshop, looking at the workbench where he'd repaired the alien device. Someone had cleaned it, removed all evidence of what he'd done there. It was just a workshop again, full of regular tools for regular repairs. Agent Martinez had come with him, overseeing the transition back to civilian life. "You'll be monitored," she'd explained. "Not obtrusively, but there are people who still want that technology. We need to make sure you're protected." "For how long?" "Maybe forever, maybe until someone forgets why you're important, hard to say." Tom nodded, accepting it. This was his life now, a farmer who'd accidentally changed galactic history, watched by intelligence agencies, living with the knowledge that he'd created and destroyed the deadliest weapon in the universe. "Was it worth it?" Martinez asked. "All of this. The fame, the danger, the ban. Do you regret fixing that device?" Tom looked out the window at his fields. In the land his grandfather had homesteaded, his father had expanded, and he'd maintained for 40 years. At the simple, normal life he'd lived before a piece of alien technology fell from the sky. "Every day," Tom said quietly. "I regret it every single day, but I also understand something now that I didn't before." "What's that?" "Farmers are dangerous, not because we're violent or aggressive, but because we solve problems. We look at nature, at systems, at how things work, and we figure out how to optimize them, how to make them more efficient, how to get better results with available resources. That's what farming is. Applied problem-solving at scale." He turned to face Martinez. "And the thing about problem-solving is, it doesn't care about intent. You can solve a problem that grows more wheat, or solves a problem that kills more efficiently. The process is the same, the skills are the same, the difference is just what problem you choose to solve." That's a dark way to look at it. "It's a realistic way," Tom corrected. "Humans are tool users. We make things, we fix things, we improve things. That's our nature. But we need to be careful about what we make, what we fix, and what we improve. Because sometimes the best solution is to leave things broken. Sometimes the best improvement is no improvement at all." Martinez left him there, alone in his workshop, alone with his thoughts and his regrets and his understanding of what he'd done. Tom Briggs lived another 23 years. He grew wheat. He fixed equipment, though he was more careful about what he fixed and how. He gave occasional lectures at universities about the ethics of innovation and the responsibility of creators. He never built another weapon, never worked on another military project, never touched alien technology again. When he died at 80, his obituary in the local paper was simple. "Tom Briggs, local farmer, passed away peacefully at home. He is survived by his daughter, 3 grandchildren, and 2,000 acres of wheat. He will be remembered for his kindness, his skill with equipment, and his wisdom in knowing when not to fix something." The galaxy remembered him differently. In military academies across 47 worlds, cadets studied the Briggs device as a cautionary tale about civilian innovation and unintended consequences. In ethics courses, philosophers debated the Marx-Briggs dilemma, the question of whether creators are responsible for uses they never intended. And in the files of the Galactic Convention, sealed under the highest security classification, detailed specifications of the molecular disruptor were stored, preserved not as a blueprint, but as a warning. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous weapons aren't created by military research or corporate development, but by ordinary people solving ordinary problems in extraordinary ways. The legacy of Tom Briggs is complicated. He didn't want to create a weapon, he just wanted to fix something broken. But in doing so, he proved something that made the entire galaxy uncomfortable. That human ingenuity, applied practically and without the constraints of conventional thinking, could outperform millennia of advanced alien engineering. The agricultural perspective he brought to alien technology, the farmer's approach to problem-solving, created something that dedicated weapons researchers couldn't match. Because Tom wasn't trying to build the perfect weapon. He was trying to make something work with available materials. And sometimes that practical, improvised approach produces results that sophisticated design never could. The ban on molecular disruptors has held for decades. No major power has attempted to recreate the technology, at least not openly. The convention's enforcement mechanisms are strong, and the memory of what Tom's device could do remains fresh enough to deter most development. But everyone knows the knowledge still exists. Somewhere in classified files, the specifications are preserved. And more importantly, the principles are understood. Any civilization with sufficient agricultural technology and materials science could probably recreate what Tom built. They don't, not because they can't, but because they've agreed not to. Because the galactic community looked at what one farmer did with broken alien equipment and available resources and collectively decided that some innovations are too dangerous to permit. That's Tom's real legacy. Not the weapon itself, but the agreement it produced. The recognition that technological progress isn't always desirable. That some capabilities, once developed, can't be controlled. That sometimes the best response to, "we could do this," is, "we shouldn't." It's a lesson the galaxy learned from a wheat farmer who just wanted to fix something broken. And it's a reminder that the most dangerous humans aren't always the ones in uniforms or laboratories. Sometimes they're the ones in workshops with decades of practical experience and a toolbox full of improvised solutions, looking at problems that nobody else sees and finding answers that nobody else imagined. Tom Briggs proved that farmers could be weapons designers, but he also proved that farmers could be ethicists, choosing to destroy their own creation rather than let it loose in the galaxy. Both lessons matter. Both changed how the galactic community views humanity. We're the species that can turn agricultural equipment into weapons of mass destruction. We are also the species that will ban our own innovations when we recognize they've gone too far. That combination of creativity and responsibility, that's what makes humanity both dangerous and trustworthy. That's why we have a place in the galactic community despite being young and reckless, because we're the ones who will fix anything. But we're also the ones who know when something shouldn't be fixed at all. Another story of dangerous human ingenuity is queued up and ready.